Good afternoon. It's 2 p.m. Thank you for tuning in. This is Market View. My name is Lungelele Makakula. The Financial Services Regulatory Authority, FSRA, conducted a three-day training session on anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism. Participants from the insurance sector, credit and savings institutions, and capital markets attended. FSRA urged financial service providers to foster a culture of integrity and move beyond compliance for the sake of compliance. To further this discussion, we'll be joined by Zama Dlamini, who is the General Manager, Market Conduct, and Hlopsile Langwenya, Manager of Anti-Money Laundering. In our business news today, the Honorable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy, Prince Lonkokela, is urging all sectors to invest heavily in the energy sector to position the country as a prime destination for foreign direct investment. And on our markets today, the US dollar is on course for its worst first half year since 1973 as it plummeted again today amid rising expectations for Federal Reserve easing and statements from President Donald Trump about his peak for the next Fed chair. Senator Sbia will join us today for our market analysis. For now, let's go straight to our first story. The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy, Prince Lonkokela, is urging all sectors, including the private sector, to invest heavily in the energy sector to position the country as a prime destination for foreign direct investment. The minister's message was delivered by the Minister for Economic Planning, Dr. Tambokina, during the Standard Bank Energy Indaba held under the theme Championing Energy Security in Eswatini. The event is currently underway at Royal Villas, Eswatini, with Eswatini importing about 80% of its energy from neighboring countries, Mozambique and South Africa. Largely, the minister's call is a strategic push to boost local energy production and reduce dependence on external sources.
As a ministry, I am proud to say that we are well on target to achieve our nationally determined contribution in terms of increasing renewable energy generation in the country. Eswatini is also committed to finding sustainable ways to address our own energy base load challenges. This is done through exploring other locally available resources such as coal and geothermal resources. Energy is a strategic pillar for fueling global development. And over recent years, we've continued to monitor the various ramifications challenging energy security on a global scale to ensure that Eswatini is well poised to develop an energy system that is responsive to the negative impact of climate change. Eswatini is a country with immense potential. However, the country faces a crucial challenge, that is our dependence on imported energy. This vulnerability not only impairs our economic stability, but also hinders our long-term development and ability to attract foreign direct investment. Rising energy prices threaten our fiscal health. The solution lies in a bold and decisive shift towards a secure and sustainable energy future. Following from the discussions held last year, I emphasize our collective commitment to energy security in Eswatini. As a ministry, we are ready to partner with all role players in order to establish risk-sharing instruments and support the development of expertise within the country on sustainable energy and its financing, ensuring the viability of energy projects. I believe that Eswatini has both the potential and the political will to find opportunities in the challenges that have been highlighted The ministry, together with ESERA and EEC, has begun to implement a structured and diversified power generation strategy. Regulatory reforms have catalyzed public sector participation. The rise of corporate power purchase agreements and embedded generation marks a turning point in how energy is generated, sold, and consumed in the country. I therefore urge you to come up innovative financing mechanisms for energy projects that will ensure equitable economic growth.
In an effort to ensure that Eswatini achieves energy sustainability, the government is prepared to act as a sovereign guarantor. The Minister for Housing and Urban Development, Apollo Mapalala, stated that the government is ready to support the Eswatini Electricity Company if it seeks to access loans. The minister made these remarks while representing the Minister of Finance, Honorable Neil Rakenberg, during the Standard Bank Energy Indaba held at Real Villas in Zulwini.
The Minister for Housing and Urban Development, Honorable Apollo Mapalala, who was representing the Minister for Finance, says government is ready to support the Eswatini Electricity Company with a sovereign guarantee. He says this measure ensures that should the company have difficulties to repay energy loans, the government can intervene and take over. He added that to promote energy sustainability in the country, a portion of the 4 billion Emalangeni loan approved by the House of Assembly is allocated specifically to the energy sector.
Maningi kakhulu lama initiatives la endawo. I think nanyalo kulama loans la several actually libekavela lana nje. I think beka public domain nani niwabonile. Nga loans lamaningi landlule eParliament enyalo. One of those loans was around energy, sufficiency for the country. So nalo yenza yabo lowa makuduza, i-finance nguye Standard Bank, but clearly hulumende uyayiprovide i-backup kuloko ukuthi imali lefakwako kulok generator noma kulok increase capacity yak generator ngemandi lokwendekale kulowa maguduza. Clearly usekhathi hulumende kuwo onke lamanye ama-energy projects la proposed i-EC nje la upresentile ukuthi kumaguga bangayi-expand i-capacity ye-production kumaguga. Clearly hulumende kutafuna belakhathi in terms not sometimes maybe not ukuthi kuboleke yena per se, but ukhanze ukuthi prepared vele bese kumention nasekukhulumeni kwethu simele litiko la finance ukuthi hulumende is prepared to offer what they call guarantees or sovereign guarantees lokuthi i-EC angahamba uboleka but hulumende asi-backstop lesikwelede noma abela ngemuva ukuthi in the event uyehluleka i-EC, government will take over that. It's a serious responsibility on the part of government, but ilitiko la finance lendi commitment ukuthi hulumende ready to offer those sovereign guarantees to anyone losuke afuna ku increase the capacity generation.
Standard Bank Chief Executive Mvuselelo Fagutse reaffirms the bank's strong commitment to driving sustainable energy solutions for the country.
I think to the nation we can say that we are seeing success on the ground. More than 30 megawatts of installed solar already in the kingdom. We've just also as a bank supported Lower Makuduza to the tune of 567 million, and in partnership with the pension fund, that's a project that's over 1 billion Emalangeni for 13 megawatts power. And there are a lot of other projects that we're evaluating. So these conversations bring policymakers, they bring regulators, they bring the private sector who consume the electricity. Also, they bring the Eswatini Electricity Company that have to distribute this energy once it's been generated.
The Eswatini Electricity Company has stated that more support is needed from all sectors to ensure Eswatini is energy sustainable.
Currently, we have about 70 megawatts of electricity that is installed in the country, 60 of which is hydro and 10 is on solar power. Now, it is important that we increase generation capacity so that we can reduce imports. And this dependence on imports is a challenge for us because we have many other areas where we have no control, in particular because we have to absorb the prices that we take from these areas where we are importing from. We need all players to participate in this energy crisis in the country. When we seek to increase generation capacity, we will need funding, and the funding will come from the financial institutions. We will also need government to back up the institutions so that should there be any default, the government should come in and step in and support those projects. We also need private sector to participate.
The country imports 80% of its energy from neighboring countries, mainly South Africa. The Standard Bank Energy Indaba aims to develop solutions to guarantee Eswatini's energy security and self-sufficiency. For Market View, Nelson Dlangamandla, Vuminkosi Nzinisa and Derek Msibi, Ezulwini.
The Central Bank of Eswatini has made a significant contribution to Corporate Social Investment (CSI), a program focused on supporting organizations that drive social and economic development in communities. Yesterday, Deputy Governor Felicia Gnene, who also serves as chairperson of the bank's CSI committee, presented donations valued at over 500,000 malangeni to 6 organizations as part of the bank's ongoing commitment to corporate social responsibility. The central bank states that the term beneficiaries has been replaced with partners to reflect the collaborative nature of these relationships. The deputy governor expressed appreciation to the partners for working alongside the bank to improve the lives of Eswatini, stating that as a bank, they believe that through this support, the beneficiaries will be better equipped to create a lasting and positive impact within their communities. The partners who receive financial support include Mary Ward Primary School, Enactors, Women, and the UNESCO Economics Society. Additionally, Cheshire Homes was donated a vehicle, while St. Mark's High School received 31 desktop computers to enhance educational resources. And that's it for our business news. Thank you for staying with us. After the break, we're joined by Zama Dlamini from FSRA. Stay with us.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. The Financial Services Regulatory Authority, FSRA, conducted a 3-day training session on anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism. Participants from the insurance sector, credit and savings institutions, and capital markets attended. FSRA urged financial service providers to foster a culture of integrity and move beyond compliance for the sake of compliance. To further this discussion, we're now joined by Zama Dlamini, who's the General Manager at FSRA. Very good afternoon, Dlamini. Thank you for joining us here at Market View. What was the main goal of this 3-day AML session with industry leaders?
Afternoon, viewers. The main goal of the 3-day session was to share the findings of the recently concluded AML-CFT sectoral risk assessment within the non-bank sector. In October 2023, the country conducted a national risk assessment, of which now the next phase was conducting the sectorial ones. Likewise, FSP or accountable institutions themselves are also then supposed to conduct their own risk assessment. In addition to sharing the findings of the sectoral risk assessment, we are also communicating our expectations for this financial year. And lastly, also to provide guidance to the accountable institutions on a tool that we have recently developed to gather data from them.
Yeah, and I suppose you presented the findings during the 3-day session. What were some of these findings of the sectoral risk assessments?
As I've indicated that the country conducted a national risk assessment. In fact, the findings of the sectoral one are reinforcing what we observed from a national perspective. I will start with the capital market space wherein we identify that the risks of money laundering are medium to high, and you will understand why it is high, because by their characteristics, capital markets are involved in high value transactions and also have a cross-border element attached to it. And some of the threats or risks that we have seen are risks of fraud. You will understand, or you'll have seen even in the local media where we have covered stories about fraud involvement in some of the institutions. There are also high risk of tax evasion because most of the licensed players, they operate in group structures, so such that some intercompany loans flowing funds from one to another entity within the group structure. So there are some of those risks that are identified. And there is also a high prevalence of pyramid scheme or Ponzi schemes. Even today, we have seen in the papers our CEO coming out to warn the public that there is a player who is unlicensed and is claiming to be an investment advisor or investment manager. So I think that is just a reflection what is prevailing. And then moving on to the insurance space, there is the in that were identified as medium, and weaknesses noted are weaknesses in governance around the AML CFT issues, weaknesses in suspicious transaction reporting, weaknesses around general compliance, because some of the insurance companies have not even appointed dedicated AML CFT compliance officers. And the most prominent threat there or risk there, we are seeing fraudulent claims where there's collusion between insurer employees and other people, and then they submit false or fraudulent claims. And then lastly, coming to the capital, to the credit and saving institution, the risks therein were medium low. But we are concerned because there are instances whereby some of the customers who have taken credit, they then come up and make lump sum payments to pay off their loans, and some of this originate from drug trafficking activities, which is why it's also an area of concern. Generally, across these sectors, the weaknesses around the AML governance frameworks, or deficiencies in the compliance function, as well as deficiencies in customer due diligence processes, as well as the filing of suspicious transaction reports.
Yeah, so you mentioned pyramid schemes as one of the high risks. I saw that in one of the newspapers today, you issued out a warning. FSRA issued out a warning against these pyramid schemes. What role does FSRA play to protect, Eswatini against these schemes?
The first thing is, as you understand, because the FSRA, one of its responsibilities is exercising oversight within the capital markets place, which is mostly where investment play around. So first, we are supposed to license whoever is venturing in the space. So that is why it is critical that as Eswatini, we first verify whether an FSP is indeed licensed. It could be an entity licensed by the FSRA or the central bank, because the central bank looks at the banking side of things and we look at the non-bank. But just beyond licensing, then we have the ongoing supervision, whereby we continuously check compliance and ensure that FSPs have the necessary controls. But then linked to this is our role, because we have to educate or empower Emaswati to be able to identify these illegal schemes. So we also have a dedicated unit that conducts consumer education initiatives throughout the country, and just to build general consumer awareness, because even the findings reveal that a lot of Emaswati do not have the necessary financial literacy level to be able to make sound financial decisions. So beyond the supervision, licensing, we carry out this consumer education, and obviously partnering with other players in the space, the Ministry of Education, the Center for Financial Inclusion, the Central Bank, and as well as other players.
All right, so we have limited time, but I just one last question before I let you go, Mr. Dlamini. What does the FSRA expect now from financial service providers going forward in terms of compliance?
We want our FSPs to understand that compliance is not just a tick box exercise. That is why even the regulators are moving away from a rules-based kind of thing to a principles to say the risk-based approach as issued by the Financial Action Task Force also says you understand your own risk better. Then you should make sure that you tailor and customize your own governance framework, your controls, your approaches, so that you then are able to respond, so that you prevent or mitigate this AML, CFT, PF risk that your particular FSP faces.
All right, thank you so much. That was Zama Dlamini from FSRA, just taking us through some of the discussions that they had during the 3-day session on the AML CFT industry session hosted by FSRA since Monday this week. After the break, we're joined by Sanel Bia for today's market analysis.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
The beats are louder, the vibes are bigger, and the stars are shining brighter. This is The Beatdown, your ultimate music and entertainment fix. With me every Saturday from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Eswatini Television, Sibuko Semaswati.
Welcome back. It's 24 minutes after 6. We are now joined by Sanele Sibia, in-house economist, for today's market analysis. Very good afternoon, Sanele. Thank you for tuning in. We have five minutes for today's analysis. If you could just go through markets today, what is happening?
Thank you, Lungelele, and a good afternoon to the viewer. So if we start with the US, Lungelele, you can see that there's a bit of mixed performance there, with the Nasdaq Composite Index there posting some positive gains, gaining some 61 points in yesterday's trading session. So that's purely due to what we're seeing happening at NATO, Lungelele, with all NATO allies and all NATO countries, signaling that they are going to increase their defense spending, and now when into 5% of GDP by 2020, by 2030 or 2027, but already signaling to move towards the 2% in the short term. So what that's why when you look at the defense spending, you can see that in as much as countries are improving their defense spending, but they are shifting mostly towards those stocks, those technology stocks. That's why the Nasdaq Composite Index there is moving ahead, that positive uptick. But when you look at the overall market sentiment in the US, there is that bit of, holding back in terms of the Dow Jones Industrial Average and also the Standard and Poor's Index there, purely because there are a bit of worries around, the independence of the Federal Reserve Bank, and then also markets are mulling and looking at what's going to happen as we get GDP data to come out this week to give us a bit of strength, a bit of indication on the strength of the US economy in June. So when we move into London, the Eurozone, we can see there's a bit of some positive news there. Markets gaining a bit, with the FTSE 100 gaining some 25 points, and the CAC in France getting some 24 points, with Germany pulling ahead with 205 points in terms of gains. So what we're seeing happening there, Lungelele, is markets have shifted back to the basics of what drives markets in terms of the performance of quite a number of those industries, and it seems to be a bit of some positive news coming out of quite a number of those companies, Lungelele. And when you look at the numbers coming out of the Europeans and also at the UK, there is a bit of some positive news around, the GDP figures, and with softening inflation across, but there are a bit of inflation fears, more especially within the UK. It seems to be plateauing at a very high level, though it's no longer inflating, but it's still relatively above the 2% target of the Bank of London. So that sends about some fears into what's going to be the Bank of London's interest rate trajectory going forward. Coming back into Asia, again, we're seeing a bit of mixed messaging there, with the Nikkei trading at back at 39,000, gaining some 642 points there. When you look at the movement, the movers there, you'll see that it's more the tech stocks still reacting to what has been happening with the NATO spending and what defense spending looks like these days. It's more technology than it is hardware. But we're seeing, both the mainland and the Hang Seng really just holding steady there at the 24,000 within Hong Kong, and Shanghai holding steady at the 3,400 mark. So that's purely because markets are looking forward to what's going to happen come 9 July when those trade tensions, when those 90-day freeze on the tariff comes into effect. Then when you come into South Africa is back on that 96,000 mark, which we saw before the start of the war between Iran and Israel. So that's purely driven by the domestic movements within South Africa. And also when you look at the price of platinum, it seems to be moving in the right direction for those South African miners, and that's pushing the Johannesburg Stock Exchange into that greener territory, maintaining that 96,000 mark. We've not seen any movement within the domestic stock markets. When you look into the commodities, gold is holding steady at $3,354 per ounce, purely because there is a bit of that issue with President Trump announcing that he will soon announce a new Federal Reserve chair before even current chair Jay Powell's term runs out. So that shows that there is a bit of an issue to do with the independence of the Feds in the US. So now that brings in a bit of uncertainty into those forex traders and into the overall trading environment. When we look at Brent crude oil is back at that $66 per barrel, gaining a bit because we've seen the news coming out of the US with US Brent crude output declining for the month. When you come into the currencies, we are doing relatively stronger against the dollar because of that spat between President Trump and the Federal Reserve, but we're showing a bit of weaknesses against the Japanese yen and the euro. Thank you.
Mrs. Bia, I always appreciate your analysis. It's 29 minutes after 2. We've come to the end of our program today. This was the last episode this week of Market View. Join us again next week, Monday at exactly 2 p.m. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a lovely weekend.